So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good at your end. I hope everything's good wherever you guys are. So guys, we've had a fight over last night. There was a fight, a biggish fight, you know, between Luis Ortiz and Andy Ruiz. I did a prediction video and breakdown of the fight. Wow. So Andy Ruiz beats Luis Ortiz over unanimous decision, dropping him 3 times during the fight. And guys, the difference was, I told you guys that Luis Ortiz has no punch resistance anymore. He is his punch resist. He's a shot fighter, and what I mean by that is his punch resistance is not there. He can't take a punch. His legs aren't there. His legs are very shaky every time he takes a shot. I noticed this when I saw him fight Wilder the second time. You could clearly see that Luis Ortiz, I mean, he looked vulnerable. Luis Ortiz, and I've watched Luis Ortiz, obviously Luis Ortiz's resume and his level of opposition hadn't been great, but one thing I noticed about Luis Ortiz, when he did take a punch, I mean, he had a pretty good chin. I mean, he had a granite chin. I mean, no one was able to really dent him, you know, from what I watched of his earlier fights. But even the Wilder first fight, I mean, I know he got stopped, but he, you know, his legs were pretty strong. Even when he got hurt, he came back hard. I mean, even in the first fight, I think his age, him being an older man, he just got fatigued and he wasn't able to in the 10th round. I think it was more exhaustion than Wilder's power. But you could tell that Ortiz was still very strong. I mean, Ortiz was, his legs were still very strong and he was still a top fighter. In the second fight, I saw, although he looked lighter and he looked like he was in good shape, probably better shape than the first fight, his punch resistance didn't look good. I mean, you could tell as soon as Wilder, I think, hit him with a jab or a couple of shots prior to the knockout, and you could tell his legs didn't look right. He looked vulnerable. And I noticed from that fight that, okay, this guy's punch resistance is gone, because Ortiz was always somebody I saw as a very tough, granite chin kind of guy. And ever since then, he just looked terrible. I mean, his fight against Martin, he got hit with a jab, and he was all over the place. And it's not like, you know, sometimes a jab can be a devastating punch late on in the fight because, you know, you've taken so much punishment, you're worn down and you get knocked out. But this was like just a jab early on, and he was just all over the place. He was holding the ropes and stuff. And I was like, Ortiz, man, surely, like, Ortiz is known for taking a good punch. I mean, he's got a good chin, but he's not being able to take this guy's jabs. I mean, Martin's not like a huge puncher. Look, heavyweights, they're big guys. They hit you, it hurt. You know, you can wipe you out. But a jab for Martin had such a concussive impact, I mean, on Ortiz, and it was like, wow, okay, this guy, my fears of his punch resistance diminishing in that fight were clearly, I think it were there for everybody to see. And for me personally, I thought in this fight, I think that probably was the difference. I think 7-8 years ago, I did say in my preview that if this fight had happened, Luis Ortiz would have won the fight. Luis Ortiz would have beaten. Andy Ruiz had all sorts of trouble with the southpaw stance. It was a pretty boring fight. Ortiz was outboxing him for large parts of that fight. But like I said, that the 3 knockdowns played such a big impact that, you know, if there weren't 3 knockdowns, Ortiz wins that fight at this age. I mean, Ortiz is way past his best. Way past his best. And I feel sorry for him because, you know, his career should be a lot different to what it was. I think he was a serious contender. You know, serious contender. I'm not saying he would have beaten everybody, but he was a serious contender. He could have been a threat for everybody. I mean, the guy was tough as nails. He had great boxing ability. He effectively outboxed Andy Ruiz in this fight, but his punch resistance let him down. You know, the old age, he just doesn't have a chin anymore. And I feel sorry for him because a lot of people are now saying he's got a China chin and he can't take a punch. No, Ortiz had a very good chin. It's his old age which has resulted in him being the way he is, where he's struggling to take a shot. And the worst thing is, you know what the worst thing is? That he was beating Andy Ruiz in this fight. I mean, he was outboxing him for large parts of that fight. And the 3 knockdowns played such a big part. I mean, it's sad that his career should be so much better than the way it's gone. So much better. It's disappointing. Very disappointing for me. Very, very disappointing. I mean, because I was a big fan of Luis Ortiz. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I was a huge fan of Luis Ortiz. I really rated him very, very highly as a fighter. I think he's southpaw. He had a great left hand. I thought his technically was very good. And Andy Ruiz was having a lot of trouble with his southpaw stance. And that's why I think Andy Ruiz knocked Ortiz down, but then he got caught with a shot. And he became very hesitant after that. And they're both counter punchers. You know, Andy Ruiz is a counter puncher and Luis Ortiz is a counter puncher. So they kind of negated themselves. But Ortiz was just a better boxer. He was all round a better boxer. But Andy Ruiz did enough in terms of hitting and hurting and being able to put him down. But like I said, the Ortiz of old probably don't get knocked down. He probably doesn't get knocked down and he probably wins the fight comfortably. And not just that, the Ortiz of old would have put more pressure and probably would have stepped on the gas and looked to force the action a lot more and would have troubled Andy Ruiz. Now, Ortiz did finish the fight strong, which I'm actually shocked that Ortiz even went to decision, because I thought Ortiz would get knocked out. And it looked like that early on when Andy Ruiz dropped Luis King Kong Ortiz, you would probably think that this is going to be an early night and Ortiz is going to get banged out here. But Ortiz managed to recuperate himself, showed a lot of heart, and managed to get through the fight. But like I said, his punch resistance, his legs just aren't there. He's old, man. He's old, and I think he's a lot older than he's advertised, to be honest with you. I know I was speaking to somebody on a Facebook group that was actually saying that no, Ortiz is 43. I think he's a lot older than that. I think you can just tell from his face, from his body. I think he's older than that, and I think he's a phenomenon. I think he's a phenomenon. The fact that at that age he can perform like that, going 12 rounds against a guy in his prime. I mean, Ruiz is not that old, and he's fast. He's explosive. I really do feel sorry for Luis Ortiz. I think Ortiz is such a good fighter. I think he would have dismantled 7-8 years ago, even when he fought Wilder, I think he would have dismantled Ruiz, because I don't think Ruiz's power would have troubled Ortiz. Ortiz was known for having a good chin. I feel so sorry for Ortiz, man. He's had a tough life. He's got a daughter that's, disabled. Man, it's just it's so devastating that a guy like that, and he seems like a proper warrior, and he seems like a nice dude as well. I just feel so sorry for the guy, man. I feel sorry for him because I feel like he didn't get what when I mean he didn't get, I felt like his ability, how to put this, I feel like he was a lot better than what he achieved. I think he should have achieved so much more. And I see a lot of people criticize, oh, Ortiz has got a bad resume. I think he was the politics of boxing, and there was a lot of other things which affected Ortiz, not being a big draw, not probably having the most exciting style. I think a fight with him and Anthony Joshua would have been great back in the day. I think it would have been really fun to watch, but it just for whatever reason, he just couldn't get those big fights. He got the Wilder fights, but I mean, we had some fights with Dillian White. There were some fights with Anthony Joshua, which could have been made for Luis Ortiz. Look, Ruiz, he's a good fighter. He's got fast hands. I think he was poor. I think he was really poor in this fight, especially considering who he was in there against someone that's past his best, to say the least. I mean, to say he's past his best is an understatement. Ortiz is way past his best. I mean, that is by no means the best version of Ortiz. And look how much problem he gave to Andy Ruiz. And in my opinion, he was outboxing him. Ortiz is a better boxer. I did say this. Ortiz is a better boxer than Andy Ruiz. There's no doubt in my mind. Ortiz just doesn't have the punch resistance anymore to compete against these young, fresh lions. I think if he was to fight Anthony Joshua, I think he'd have success, but I think he'd get banged out. The fact that I actually predicted Ruiz was going to knock him out because I didn't think Ortiz had the chin. Ortiz just got through that fight on pure heart and determination. I mean, that again tells you how much of a warrior he is. The fact that he was able to get through a fight which, where he was knocked down 3 times, he got back up, he kept going, because the man's a proper warrior, but he doesn't have it anymore. He doesn't have the chin anymore to fight these young guys. And he's going to get put down because Martin put him down. I mean, for me, Ortiz 7-8 years ago would have wiped Martin out in 2 rounds. Martin's not on Ortiz's level at all. I mean, and I thought Martin was going to win. I honestly thought Martin was going to knock him out because it looked like it, because Ortiz was just on wobbly legs. I mean, and Martin's not in Ortiz's class, but he had him in all sorts of trouble. And even with this Ruiz fight, I mean, Ruiz is a top 10 heavyweight. I mean, he had Ruiz in all sorts of trouble. I mean, Ruiz was struggling in the fight. He was struggling. You know, there was many people think, I've seen people online say that they think Ortiz won the fight. I don't think so. I think Ruiz did enough with the 3 knockdowns, because he knocked him down 3 times. I mean, those are big round swings. I mean, but I think a large majority of that fight, I think Andy Ruiz was getting outboxed. He was really struggling with Ortiz, because Ortiz is a special fighter. I keep telling people Ortiz was a great fighter, but unfortunately, boxing politics didn't favor him and hurt his career. I mean, I just feel like Ortiz, there was so much more from someone like Luis Ortiz. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough big fights with him. I don't know what Ortiz is going to do. He's probably going to retire. I did say that there's nowhere to go for the loser. Look, Ortiz could probably carry on, but I don't see there being any future in terms of the higher echelon in the heavyweight division. I think he'd probably become a gatekeeper for the top guys. Maybe if somebody wants to have a tune-up fight. I don't know if Ortiz is going to carry on. Obviously, I don't think he's made ridiculous amounts of money, so he may continue. I'd like to think he got paid well in this fight. I'd like to think he got paid well in the 2 Wilder fights, but still, I think he could have made a lot more money with the talent that he had. Someone like Andy Ruiz, Andy Ruiz has made so much money. And really, I think Luis Ortiz was a better fighter than Andy Ruiz. But sometimes you're in the right place at the right time. And Andy Ruiz was a beneficiary of that. He was in the right place at the right time. He benefited from beating Anthony Joshua. His name skyrocketed. But I actually think someone like Luis Ortiz was a better fighter, more skilled, very, very dangerous southpaw, that unfortunately just didn't get enough big fights. And listen, some of it his own fault. I say his own fault because the Anthony Joshua fight, some people say he wasn't ready. This, that, and the other. I think it was the fact that Al Heyman had him lined up for Deontay Wilder, so I think he wasn't able to take the fight. That's just the way I see it. And I feel like boxing politics probably hurt him getting those major fights. I think Luis Ortiz doesn't come across to me as a guy that would duck and dodge anyone. I mean, just look at him. He doesn't look like a guy that's going to be afraid to fight anybody. He doesn't come across that type of guy. He'd fight anyone. But unfortunately, just like I said, things just didn't work out for him. And his career's panned out the way it's panned out. Yeah, I think, look, Ruiz, he's going to move on. They're talking about a fight with him and Deontay Wilder. I think Deontay Wilder starches him, to be honest. I think I've always said that I think anyone that has not much head movement, that's pretty slow, I think the right hand is there, and I think Wilder would knock him out. I do. I think Ruiz has got a great chin. He's shown that in the past, but I think Wilder's got the kind of power that I just think he'll wipe you out, and I think he'll do it to Andy Ruiz. I think Wilder knocks Andy Ruiz out if they were to fight, and I think that's the fight that the PBC are lining up, to be honest with you. I feel for Ortiz. What next for him? Probably retirement. Maybe becomes a gatekeeper. I don't know. It wasn't like he disgraced himself in that performance. It wasn't like he was wiped out. He caused Andy Ruiz a lot of trouble. So that, like I said, if he wants to continue, there probably is a future. But yeah, I don't think he has the chin or the punch resistance anymore, the legs anymore to compete against these young guns. I think his days are gone. That's just my opinion. But leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. How did you see the fight? How did you score the fight? What did you make of Ortiz's performance? What did you make of Ruiz's performance? Let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.